So when we're working with speed, one thing to remember is that the word speed really just means the travelling rate. So really we're talking about how far something can travel in a set amount of time. So when we worked out earlier, we worked out our hopping rate, we worked out how many hops we could do in say 1 minute or say in 1 hour. So when we're talking about speed, we're talking about how much distance it can go in say 1 hour. And actually when we are talking about speed, it generally is always measured in hours. So remember, anytime we have a rate, it's usually something per something. And when we're talking about speed, as I just said, it's usually in hours. And you might be familiar with having heard of miles per hour. And the reason you've probably heard of that before is because that's generally the unit that we use in the UK for measuring speed. Although in other countries, it could be kilometres per hour. And that tends to be the case if you were in Spain or France or anywhere else in Europe. That tends to be the case, they measure in kilometres per hour. The main thing to remember with that though is that what the speed is telling us is this is how many miles this little car could do in 1 hour if it kept at that exact same travelling rate that it's on just now. So let's have a look at how that would work. Okay, we've got this little example here and you'll see I've done my best drawing skills for you today. I've done an exact replica of what an Asda lorry looks like. I'm sure you'll recognise this from the roads around here, drain things. So let's say that our Asda lorry, he's on the motorway, okay, but because it's a lorry it doesn't go too fast, it can't get up to the usual speed on the motorway. So let's say that he is sticking at 60 miles per hour. And that's usually abbreviated down to mph for miles per hour. That's how we would generally write that out, like that. So if he is doing 60 miles per hour, that means per hour he would travel 60 miles. So if we just left this lorry driving away and away and away, so we just timed it and we thought, right, let's start a timer here. And then after 1 hour, if we went back to our Asda lorry, he would have travelled away down his road. If he kept at his exact same speed, if he'd travelled and we'd left him for an hour, he would have got 60 miles down the road. And that's because 60 miles per hour means he will actually travel 60 miles in 1 hour. So it actually makes a lot of sense to think about it that way. In that last example, I was able to tell you how fast the little Asda van was going. But sometimes you might not be given that information. You might need to calculate the speed yourself. And actually this is something that you can use just in your life, just for fun as well. If you want, you can work out how fast you can run, how fast you can cycle, how fast you can use a scooter. And really the only things we need are two pieces of information to work out the speed. So we want to work out the speed today. So let's just put that as a, who knows, a wee question mark. But the two pieces of information that we do need are the distance and the time. And the reason that we need both of these is because there's a little equation we can use, which is this. So speed equals distance over time. That means divided, or we can just say S equals D divided by T, where speed, distance, time is what those stand for. So let's say we've got our little Asda truck. And let's say that he travelled 90 miles. He went all the way up to Dundee, let's say. I have no idea if Dundee's 90 miles away, but let's just say that it is because we're doing an example. And let's actually just say that it took him 1 hour to get there. 1 hour to get all the way up to Dundee to travel 90 miles. Now remember, speed is in miles per hour. So how many miles did he travel in 1 hour? And actually I don't even need to do my sum that I've put out here because I can see he did 90 miles in 1 hour, so it must be 90 miles per hour. But just to make sure, speed equals distance divided by time. The distance, so 90 divided by 1, is always going to still be 90, isn't it? Now that's a very simple example because I don't know about you, but I can't imagine a little Asda truck doing 90 miles per hour all the way up to Dundee and not getting in trouble with the police. I find that hard to believe actually, so that's probably very unlikely. So let's just change the examples of the numbers we're using and let's make it a bit more realistic. Let's say in fact actually it took him, let's say 2 hours to get up to Dundee. So it took him 2 hours to go 90 miles this time. Again, I can just look at the sum that I need to use. So speed equals distance divided by time. The distance is 90, divide that by the time, which is 2. One way I like to think about this, 90 minutes for a football match, 2 halves, each half's 45. So he was actually going 45 miles per hour to get up to Dundee. That's a bit more realistic for the little Asda van, isn't it? Let's do another wee example though. Let's say that we have, and we're going to calculate the speed again, just using the exact same method. So we don't know our speed yet, but we do know the distance and we do know the time. Let's say this time that he drove 500 miles. Please don't break into Proclaimers music at this point. He drove 500 miles and it took him 10 hours. Quite a long journey, that one. Now again, remember, speed equals the distance divided by the time. The distance is 500, the time is 10. 500 divided by 10 is, you guessed it, 50 miles per hour. Because remember, if we want to get it down to 1 hour, we need to divide it down to get to 1. So 50 miles per hour. But they might not always be as simple numbers to work with. I've given you some nice, easy, round numbers to work with, and they might not always be as nice to work with as that. So in some cases, maybe the distance could be something awkward. It could be something like 731 miles, and that might take him, let's say, it's probably going to take him a wee while to go that far, isn't it? So let's say it took him, let's go 9 hours. Now I guess one way you could do it is you could just get your bus stop sum set up. Speed equals distance divided by the time, so put the distance in here, 731, and I'm dividing it by time, which is 9. And you could just work your way through it like that, I guess, couldn't you? In fact, let's just do it really quickly. That won't work. Remainder 7. I know that 8 9s are 72, so put an 8 there. Remainder 1. I'll be able to get 1 in there. And let's just make it a decimal. That would leave us 2 left over. And that's going to give me 81.2 miles per hour. And I could just round it down to 81 miles per hour. Now it's up to you if you want to go ahead and do all the I was going to say vertical calculations, your bus stop sums, but to be honest, my main focus for you today is to get the actual strategy down. So making sure you know how to use your speed equals distance divided by time. In which case, you can just go ahead and use a calculator. So let's just make sure that my bus stop sum was actually right. So it was 731 divided by the time, which was 9, which would be 81.2, or 81 to round it down. This is all we're doing for today, so just any time that you have to work out the speed, the two things that you definitely need would be the distance and the time. So anytime you see the distance and the time, you'll be able to work out the speed. And just remember this little equation here, speed equals distance divided by time. If you remember that, I'm sure you can't go wrong today, but please feel free to get in touch if you would like any extra help. We can do some extra wee videos, or we can do a little meet after our video chat today. Just let me know if that's something you would be into, but good luck, and I'm sure you'll get on good, but let me know.